welcome to Per la Victoire, where we explore historic and vintage fashions. I've been working on a few Edwardian sewing projects recently. You can check out my Instagram for real-time project updates and progress photos, and I referenced my small collection of antique garments for some guidance. Today I'm excited to share with you a detailed look at two pieces from my collection, two original Edwardian shirtwaists. They share some things in common, like their fit and overall shape, but they differ in fabrication, details, and techniques. And those are the details I really enjoy diving into when looking at antique garments. One garment is a stereotypical Edwardian blouse, white with lace insertion and embroidery, and another is a more austere and serviceable black shirtwaist with a gorgeous fabric and very simple construction. So let's dive in. We'll start by examining this quintessential Edwardian shirtwaist, made of a lightweight, almost sheer white cotton and decorated with lace insertion, embroidery, and pintucks. It was made with a combination of machine sewing and very fine hand sewing. This large tuck at the shoulder is especially interesting. It's 1 inch deep and nearly covers the top of the arm size seam. Two strips of lace insertion extend down the front of the blouse, ending before the hem. The sleeve cap is lightly gathered, and very narrow pintucks and insertion lace decorate the length of the sleeve. The pintucks on this blouse are just a few millimeters wide. Instead of the usual cuff, the sleeve is finished off with 2 strips of lace sewn together. To finish off the sleeve hem, it appears that the lace was stitched on to the right side of the fabric. The raw edge of the fabric was trimmed and folded to the inside, and then an additional line of stitching on top of the lace secured the fold. Let's take a look at the seams. This shirtwaist has an extra panel under the arm, like the folkwear Gibson Girl blouse pattern. The seam allowances here are loosely whip-stitched to prevent fraying. The side back seam is a French seam that encloses all raw edges. The seam allowances of the shoulder seam were also whip-stitched. The arm size seam, where the sleeve meets the bodice, has been finished off with a bias strip from the same fabric, hand sewn in place. The hem has been folded up twice and sewn by machine. I really love how dense and even the embroidery is. The embroidery features satin stitch flowers with an eyelet center, stem stitch, and seed stitch leaves. This embroidery is just as beautiful from the wrong side of the fabric. The back of this shirtwaist is just as carefully decorated as the front. The lace insertion extends to the back panels, suggesting that this detail was added after most of the garment was assembled. We can also see the typical shape of early 1900s shirtwaists, with the front cut lower and fuller than the back to achieve the gently bloused pigeon front that was fashionable at the time. The back panels are gathered at the waist, and 1 centimeter wide twill tape secures these gathers. When the blouse is worn, the tape is tied at the front to gather up the front of the blouse. The blouse fastens at the back with incredible handmade buttons. They appear to be thread over a metal mold or ring, and delicate hand-sewn buttonholes. Lace insertion was used to join the collar to the shirtwaist. The collar is also trimmed in lace and embroidery and fastens at the very top with a tiny hook and eye. We can see casings for some kind of boning around the inside of the collar. These might have been celluloid or curved wire collar stays. There are 3 collar stay casings, and they appear to be made of some kind of cotton tape. I really love that the selvage of the fabric was used for the back plackets. In a garment that didn't spare any careful details, they chose to save the smallest bit of time and material by only folding down the fabric once to create the placket. I don't think we could achieve this today, as the woven selvages on modern fabrics are much wider. The lace insertion at the front of the bodice is also interesting to me because of this overlapping swirl design. I admire the maker's skill in curving the lace and fabric perfectly to create this detail. This shirtwaist is a beautiful testament to the maker's skill. It has no label or provenance, so I assume it was handmade by the person who wore it. My black shirtwaist has a very similar cut, but shows a much simpler and faster method of assembly. Like the white shirtwaist, it has softly puffed sleeves, a full front, and gathering at the back waist. It doesn't have the extra seam under the arm, so the bodice is only made of 4 main pieces, 2 backs and 2 fronts. The only decoration here is this outstanding fabric, which is an almost sheer black cotton. It has a stiffer hand than the white fabric, with stripes of an amazing silky texture and raised woven design. I didn't do a burn test on this fabric, so I don't know if the stripes are a different fiber, but I suspect they are. It shares another similarity with the white shirtwaist, which is this 1-inch deep tuck near the shoulder on the front of the garment. I think both blouses were created around the same time, between 1907 and 1909. These fashion pleats show a similar soft fullness in the sleeves and the deep pleat towards the shoulder. I wonder if the maker of this black shirtwaist was low on fabric, because the front panels were both pieced with extra material to make up the difference. The piecing seams weren't finished, just left raw, as were most of the other seams on this garment. The hem was sewn by machine, and it's a strange relief to see how clunky the hem is in some areas. This shirtwaist fastens at the front with a hidden button placket. The buttonholes were sewn by hand, but with coarser thread and less finesse than those on the white shirtwaist. The buttons were at one point removed, but their threads remain. There are 5 buttonholes along the placket. This blouse also has a tie that extends from the back and fastens in front. The tie is made of a long strip of the fabric, cut on the lengthwise grain, which has been sewn together. It's amazing to see that the ends of the tie were left raw. There are just a few gathers at the center back, and we can see that the back has been cut in 2 pieces, instead of on the fold. The maker aligned the back pieces along the selvage, so here's another example of how those small, tight selvages were incorporated into their garments. Normally, a center back seam could be an opportunity to provide more shape to the garment, but here it was left perfectly straight. On the inside, we can also see a piece of fabric. It looks like an offcut from the tie that was sewn onto the gathers, perhaps to help keep them in place or provide stability. The neckline is finished off with a simple collar cut on the straight grain. Near the shoulder seams, a few stitches make a small dart to help this basic collar curve around the neck. The sleeves were softly gathered into cuffs that are 1.5 inches tall. From the inside, we can see that the cuff was finished and attached to the bottom of the sleeve before the sleeve seam was sewn up. This is a time-saving technique, and possibly made the shirtwaist easier to sew, and it makes me wonder if this garment was made in a factory or some kind of manufacturing setting. Interestingly, the arm size seams were also finished with a bias strip of fabric, but you can see that it's a rough finish with the raw edges of the bias exposed. Sewing doesn't have to be neat and pretty to be effective. This shirtwaist managed to survive for a century despite the sloppy sewing. Even without all the delicate details, this shirtwaist is still pretty and functional, and a great example of what a working class woman may have worn as her Sunday best. I hope you found this video helpful and inspiring. If you did, please leave a like down below. Let me know in the comments if you ever took a look at antique clothing, whether in your own collection, a friend's collection, maybe a photo from a museum's online archive or an online auction. Let me know what you learned from those. I'd love to share the knowledge, spread the knowledge of all the really interesting and almost forgotten techniques of sewing that we can learn from antique garments. If you'd like to see more content from me, please subscribe and click on the notification bell so you receive a notification anytime I upload a video. I have a bit of an erratic posting schedule. I kind of just get to these when I get to them, so not really consistent, but I'm just trying to do my best to share information and resources with you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in my next video.